where to start. And I thought, well, this might be too obvious, but what an amazing film. I was worried about this film. I love Blade Runner. Blade Runner, the original, particularly the final cut, was an awesome piece of filmmaking. I liked its pace. It wasn't actually a hit, was it, at the time, with the audience, but that's what made it so great. Denis Villeneuve actually really nailed this, I think. But then I thought, well, maybe someone else will talk about a film. Maybe a film's too obvious. And coming back to Europe, I've had the opportunity as the European CD to actually get around to our Amsterdam and Munich offices. So Martin, the CD in Munich, said, come over. Have you ever been to Oktoberfest? Oktoberfest sounds brilliant. But they may be dressed up like that. That's going quite lederhosen. So I thought, well, maybe that's a mind-blowing experience. And to be fair, Oktoberfest was mind-blowing. I saw so many people passing out, being taken away in an ambulance. I drank some of the brew, it was quite strong. But I figured maybe that's not that interesting. So where I got to was pink lycra. Pink lycra blew my mind in 2017. Anyone else worn pink lycra? No?
Yeah.
You have? Pink lycra can change the world. Pink lycra can propel you up mountains. It can make you feel amazing. It doesn't look particularly good on middle-aged men, I can tell you. But you know what? It can also help do amazing things, like cure cancer. And that's what I want to talk about today. This man is a guy called Ed Booty. He's another expat who lives in Singapore. He's actually the regional planning director of Publicis, so he works in the advertising business. And that's him on a bike. He doesn't really ride bikes very often, but he's got a couple of friends who set up this amazing charity. And he got me to wear lycra. So this is me in September taking part in a charity ride called The Cure. And as part of the... I might need someone to press play actually, Joel. So Ed has never done much cycling, but because his friends have set up this charity, he agreed, and I, over a pint, agreed to go on this adventure with him. And he said, it's just a little tour in France, we'll do a bit of riding, we drink some rosé, it'll be really good, and we'll raise some money for this amazing charity. So I said, okay. So I went out for a bit of a ride with one of my good mates, Chris, and this was about 6 weeks before the ride actually started. So there's Ed, who's never really ridden bikes, and there's me trying to get used to cleats. So this is me. Yeah, press play.
It's playing. No.
It's not playing?
Sorry. Oh.
First technical hitch.
Oh. There's the mouse. Oh.
We have to describe. It's not as funny. You have to see it. There you go. You've got it. Here. Press this. Press it. Press it. Oh. Now the thing is, the guy. Let's play. It's great. So my mate Chris is here, and he's actually got one of these HD cameras. That's an amazing, mind-blowing thing. A light with a camera. It's HD quality. It is definitely playing. It's stopped again, Joe. Can we get someone technical, please, on the next?
What name?
Yeah. It's playing, but it's not doing anything.
That's the...
Did you crash?
No, it's something
that's me there, you see. What happens is, I've come up all here because this is a hill, and I've been climbing for about 2 or 3 minutes, not very fair. I come up here, and I'm so happy because Chris has been waiting for me for about 10 minutes. I mean, I try to get out my cleats, and I don't know if we've got any cyclists here, but cleats are the most amazing things if you're not used to them. And I try, and I wobble, and I fall into the road in front of a car, and you all be gone, ah!
Oh, nice.
But luckily I survived. It's still not playing.
You worked when I compiled it.
It's alright.
You rode up the hill.
So we need to fill like 10 minutes anyway, so. That's not doing anything. Don't worry. We'll move on.
It did play before.
So you would have seen me fall off my bike. So the point is, we were pretty ill prepared. So the Cure was actually set up by two guys with a mission to actually help Royal Marsden, which is a hospital out in Sutton. And they're at the pioneering cutting edge of breast cancer research. So one of the things they're actually doing is actually using blood biopsy to identify tumours earlier without the need for surgery. So set up in 2014 because Tony Butler, that guy there, his wife had breast cancer. But Professor Ian Smith at Marsden actually treated her with an experimental treatment. 6 months later, she got the all clear. But whilst this was going on, Tony and Paddy, the man there, they decided they wanted to do something to really raise funds for Royal Marsden. So in the last 4 years, every year the Cure happens, and I was lucky enough to take part in it this year. Now, when we were doing the research, none of these videos were
Sorry.
can we swap machines? Can we go onto my laptop?
HDMI.
HDMI, that's fine. Sorry guys. There we go.
Slow clap. That's the clap. Why don't we take a picture? Oh, pass the time. La la la. Hello. Hello people. Over there. Hello. I'm Steve Jobs. And I'm here to unveil to you the new MacBook Pro.
Tell a joke.
Tell a joke.
Give us a little.
Not very funny. Nothing comes to mind. It's all wine. Red wine. Drink red wine. This, wow, it's so fast. We just swap like that. That should work.
Yeah, to make sure the sound's coming through.
This is a clicker.
Click on your side right on the top and shift.
Thank you. It's all right now. Okay.
Okay.
Retake.
Big question. See which is the first one can answer this very difficult question. What does Le Cure stand for? What is Le Cure in English? Lame joke. What?
Oh, there you go.
Booze. Oh yeah. Back to your regular program.
See, Chris is still waiting for me. Come on, come on. Come on, Grant.
It's slow.
Look at that. Come on. Like Lance Armstrong. Look at that.
Wondering why.
Le Cure.
Okay, oh, trying to get it out. Oh, 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 oh. So that's my first training run. So yeah, we were well prepared for this. And then it's just proceeded. It turned out to be a bit more than just a little bike ride. So far they've raised $1 million. And as part of the research, the guy said, yeah, one of the climbs we're going to do is La Planète, which is actually the highest paved road in France. I found this piece of Tour de France footage. This is from the 80s, but there's only been climbed sort of 3 times in the Tour de France. But this filled me with wonder, actually. I thought, well, yeah, this is really motivating. That's just not going to work. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah? So there it is.
As Paul Sherwin said when he drove over this climb last night, it was probably the worst climb he'd ever seen. He was rather pleased but they never included this climb during his years in the Tour de France. In fact, this climb has only been climbed twice before, back in the 60s, 1963 and 1964, with the great Spanish champion Federico Baramontes, the Eagle of Toledo, who is the man who won at the top of the climb on both occasions. And
so I'm thinking, great, so Ed Booty, my good mate in Singapore, who's never really ridden a bicycle, I've tried to work out cleats, and now one of the climbs we've got to do, actually Tour de France riders are saying they don't want to do it. Maybe this is a bit serious. And then I found out that, well, actually this is what we've got to do. 4 days. Starting in Valverde, and then 2 climbs a day, and then the final day, you do 3. It's genius. But I suppose the point about the queue, and this is the beautiful thing which blew my mind, this is a group of people who do this. They go through the pain, but that pain is nothing compared to the cancer, patients, and the research and pioneering work people like Professor Ian Smith is doing. And actually, the prof, as he's known, he's done the ride every year. So he's there, he's in his early 60s, and he's there riding with us. So this year, there were, I think, 75 of us, all dressed in pink lycra. Pink lycra can change the world. It can cure cancer, and that's literally what is happening with this kind of ride. And again, as we took off, my bike was actually late, and I managed to clip in. And within 2 minutes, you see that on the road, which, again, fills you with fear. But then you see the beauty of the Alps. And the realisation of how far we've got to go. After about 10 minutes, all these videos are playing. Ed's had to have a bit of a stretch. I do think, you know, the likes of Chris Froome have got nothing to worry about with us on the road. And of course there's these beautiful, beautiful mountains and tracks going up. And it's very well organised, there's a support crew there helping you, bike mechanics at given points. But what you then really start to appreciate, we went up this road, it's literally up through valleys, up and down, and along the way you meet interesting people. There's this guy here walking his donkey and his horse. And again along the way, good old Ed, this is about 10 miles in, taking a breather. 11 miles in, you have another break, take on some more water. But what we realised is we were super underprepared, but it's amazing what the human body can do. Ed isn't the fittest guy, he's a pretty smart guy, but he wasn't prepared. And the surprising thing about the climbing, you climb and climb and climb, 4 hours of climbing, and you get to the flatter bit, which is still maybe just 2% gradient. But it feels like you're going downhill. Your mind plays tricks on you. And then you get to the top and you get that sense of relief, but then you've got to get down. And some of the descents, 45 minutes of going downhill, and up to like 60, 70k an hour. And that was more scary than anything. The mental power of actually concentrating, making sure you didn't come off. And it gets cold. When you're going down at that kind of speed, you're doing that at 7 AM in the morning, if you haven't got gloves, you're in for trouble. So Ed had to borrow the gloves off the mechanic, which happened to be these big rubber things. And he also pretty much got hypothermia now. But I got Ed round. That was the point. Ed's not the fittest bloke, but had the right mental power to get himself up 9 climbs in 4 days.
Great climber. Men who can so easily win races in their own right, but they have to succumb to the domesticity of helping their team leaders.
So this is the tour going up in 1986, so this is the bonnet. This is the actual profile of it. Yeah? So that thing I fell off earlier was about 2% gradient, just to give you an idea, my training ride. And this is over, 25 kilometres. You get this sign at the bottom telling you it's 2,800 metres up. And it's called the bonnet because it looks like a hat. So the road actually goes up. And actually at this point, 3.5 hours in, you then see that, and it's like the final 8% gradient. That's the tough bit. Can you make it to the top? And just to bring that to life, I don't know if anyone uses Strava. That for me is another mind-blowing thing, because it enabled us to keep track of where we've been. But there's another application called Relive, which actually takes all your Strava data and creates a film for you. So just to give you a sense of how much a day on this ride is, this is our day 3 going up the bonnet. Probably should put some music to this to make it a little more interesting. This is all going through the valley at the moment. You'll see we're starting to climb now. There you go. There we go. So that's the first bit. Now we're coming around. So this is the bonnet here at the top. There you go around. There we go. You'll see us hitting 60 km or something.
Wow.
And then there's the second climb. This is climb 2. That's the Game of Thrones there. So there you go, that's just one day. We average 16k an hour. The Tour de France guys, they're averaging 30, 40 kilometres an hour for that whole day. So again, another mind-blowing thing for me is to go, when I watch the Tour de France on TV, how much pain and how awesome those guys are. So today we've actually raised a whole load of cash. I think Ed is thinking about doing it on the mopeds next year, and we had a target of 300,000 this year to raise, and with the gift aid we're at 306,000 pounds. And this is a message which the Prof sent us all, at the end of the ride. He was straight with 3 different fellow ships which they're devising, and that money is powering the Marsden for another year's worth of research. So for me, that was the thing which blew my mind in 2017. Not Lycra itself, but the cure, the special spirit, the different people. The fact we had cancer survivors who've been through the Marsden actually on that ride with the professor himself. That to me just gave me an amazing feeling in 2017. I just wanted to share that. So thank you very much.
Wow. I cycle across London and I'm tired and my back is breaking. But yeah, amazing. We're gonna. So, Jared, you ready?
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, that was really good. I took a very different approach. I was like, fuck, I should have done something fun. Who in here works in some sort of I see familiar faces, in some sort of advertising, branding, design, communications, PR, digital, that world? All right, fine. I'm safe now. Great. So, I thought I'm going to tell you just a little bit about me, not because that's any more interesting than each one of you, but it will let you know where my perspective is coming from. Because I say some things that are sort of bold, really bold. At times, the other day I work at a big agency. I'll tell you the agency after I tell you the anecdote. But the other day, I was writing on LinkedIn, and I wrote something that was, a little bit of a critique of the industry, but nothing too crazy. And then someone within the very large agency group that I work at was like, oh, you can't say that, that's too provocative. And I thought to myself, my goodness, nothing should be sacrilege. I mean, nothing should be that we can't talk about it. So they got blocked, basically. So my point is, I will say some stuff that's a little bit provocative, but I'm not afraid to be provocative. I don't think that's a bad thing, especially when we're all creative-minded people. So I work, actually, as the global head of strategic innovation for Starcom Global. So Starcom is the largest agency within the Publicis Group. And I am there. And before that, I was the global head of strategy for Essence, which is this big one in Japan. I was the head of innovation globally for Cara, which is a big one within Denser Regis. And then before that, I was actually working in branding and design and advertising. My journey is I'm American. I'm from the Deep South, North Carolina. Hence the accent's going to do some crazy stuff. North Carolina, lived in New York City for 8 years, have lived here for 7 years, became British, the irony of it all. And yeah, and now I'm starting a business out of LA. I get bored, so I have lots of hustles, which I find creative people have a lot of little side hustles going on. I think we need to, so that we don't end up hating our corporate jobs. It's very, very important, because when you're like, oh my gosh, this client is horrible, you have something else that you can at least get your fulfillment from. So I started out early in my life with design, creativity, and then I went to Pratt, and I realized after my, I was taking design courses, and after my professor was like, wow, your ideas are really good, maybe you should be a strategist. And I was like, oh fuck, she hates my designs, basically. And they're very, very bad. And I actually was like, okay, fine, I'm not going to be a designer, I'll pivot. And so my whole journey, and what I'm going to say today, is really about you need to know when you need to pivot. You need to know when you need to try a different direction, or you need to learn a new skill, or you need to jump ship. So started design, sort of moved into sort of strategy, planning, innovation direction. I was told early in my career, you got great ideas, but wow, your writing is really bad. And I grew up on a farm in North Carolina where, you know, my family's education levels are not very high. And so I purposely sort of made it my goal to like, I've got to learn how to write. I've got to figure out how to do this. And so I just practiced and practiced and practiced, and I took courses. I took courses in creative writing and business writing, which is pointless. It's pretty much like creative writing. And I started writing and writing and writing. And then about 4 years ago, I was like, I think I should try to write a book. And so I wrote a book. And the book is called Listening Brands, How Data is Rewriting the Rules of Branding. And it's this, the large idea behind it is that data points today, data points could be search stuff, it could be browser stuff, it could be content, commentary and sentiment analysis, it could be imagery, it could be emoticons. These are the things that should be our jump-off points for our creative ideas. Where when I started out in the career, people just went into a room and was like, let's have a brainstorm, and just threw creative shit on the wall, and then they like stood in front of a client and they said, oh, we did lots of research to come up with this, which was a lie. And so that's what the book is about. And this is where I'm coming from with all of this. So, the start of the end of advertising. So I grew up in North Carolina, like I said, in a rural Southern Baptist church that preached hellfire and brimstone. So naturally, I tilt that direction. So I understand that's a startling headline, but I think sometimes we need startling headlines so that we are a little bit introspective, critical, we really analyze and we think and we process. So the start of the end of advertising. And I started thinking about this year, what blew my mind in relation to creativity, advertising, that space. And there were sort of three things. It's not a good strategy presentation if it doesn't have a Venn diagram, so that's why it's there. And these three things sort of really blew my mind. One was this idea of the big tech dominance of media and advertising. 10 years ago, I look at these sort of charts every day. 10 years ago globally, a significant amount of like advertising money was still spent with things like Fox Pictures and TV and Yahoo and these sort of things. Today, right now, over 50% and exceeding very fast, all advertising spent is in Google or in Facebook. Google and Facebook have more people working on Procter & Gamble than the global media advertising agencies combined. So I started to be like, oh my God, it would take nothing for them to just snatch all of our jobs away and shut down our industry. It truly would. And I would even argue the only reason that creative industry and media industry is alive today is because Google and Facebook made a strategic decision that they were going to help those industries thrive as opposed to annihilate them. True story. And so this has got me thinking like, whoa, where are we going? Where are we going? I am starting up a business in America out of LA, and I know that I can go directly into Google, I can go directly into Facebook, and very easily, in the back end, I just make an ad, enter, and it's into my target audience. What does that mean if you're a designer? What does that mean if you are the type of person that likes to come up with those concepts and that idea? Are we being commoditized? Like, do we have a future? We do, by the way. The other thing, and we'll talk about these things, the other thing is WPP Performance, big holding group WPP. They're having a very, very, very shitty year. So if you work for them, it's fine. Things go up and things go down. They're having an extremely, extremely shitty year. I'll talk about that in a second. And then e-com disruption. One of the reasons I'm doing a startup, I don't even call it a startup. I'm just running a business. Startup is such a weird word. It just makes you think failure immediately. It really does. I don't have a startup, and people are like, good luck with that. We'll see you in a year. You know, it really does. It just rings failure to me. And I've really tried to think with this startup about how to, one, not call ourselves a startup, not be too dependent on other people's money. So I've been hustling on the weekends for over 2 years, nights. How to use media and digital to the best of my ability, and how to move into a space where there's an absolute opportunity. Warren Buffett said, you know, if you want to buy stock in a toilet paper company, because people are always going to need to wipe their ass with something. And so that's what I've thought about when doing this startup. I'm like, not startup, doing this business. I thought, where could I go and truly disrupt? Because there is no competition there, or the competition is really, really shitty. Not toilet paper, but all of that combined is what, see why I'm not a designer? Is what really blew my head. I mean, I was really like, whoa, the ship is going down, and I either need to get in a unique life vessel, or I have to just totally exit this whole game. I want to talk about this for one moment. Do you know Dollar Shave Club? I imagine you will. Mm-hmm. And now they've launched Harry's here. Dollar Shave Club launched in 2011 in the US. I mean, just a tiny little team, just smart people using Facebook in a really clever way, having a funny little video on YouTube that they threw a bunch of money behind that had very low production value of that video. And the idea was like, hey, you're paying too much for these razors. This is ridiculous. All you need is 3 sharp blades and it'll do the job. And why do you need to go into a store and buy that kind of thing? We'll just send it to your house. Since they launched in 2011, Procter & Gamble's giant brand, Gillette Worldwide, has lost 20% of their market share. That is absolutely catastrophic for P&G. That's crazy, crazy loss. They've tried to pivot, they've tried to like respond and do their own thing, but it's just not cool. It's copycatter. Their whole strategy was about like, let's sell in retail stores, physical little stores like Boots. Let's fool the consumers into thinking our product is more premium and that you need all these ridiculous features like 5 blades, 6 blades. You need this grip or that grip, and you need a lotion strip or 2 lotion strips. I mean, all of that was just ridiculous. And so they totally just blew them out of the water by solely using social media. Now, another thing that sort of blew my mind is that so many of our clients, like Procter & Gamble, many of our agencies thrive off of these big brands, right? So many of them are still depending on like stores, like physical stores. And I brought this up when I was pitching a client recently, a very large global fragrance brand. I'm just trying to think if I can say out loud. Probably can't. Large house of fragrance brands, which just found out they won the pitch. Who depended very, very much on like the center of these stores where you like smell the fragrance and stuff. And I kind of went in, I was like, so let me get this right. You depend on all your sales from these physical stores and these little altars of fragrance, these little meccas in the middle. That's where you depend on that. You don't really have an e-commerce play, and then you can't smell a selfie. And I was like, so you're pretty much fucked unless you do something very, very different. And this was startling to me. So when I was doing this research, I found this, that these stores are closing. They are losing their market share, and then Amazon is becoming this Goliath of a thing, which is very much just picking little brands up, commoditizing left and right. Just commoditizing. Batteries, Amazon's the best batteries. You don't need Duracell, Energizer anymore. Diapers, Amazon's the best diapers brand. Left and right, left and right, left and right, left and right. And they're not having to advertise that at all. So what's the role of advertising and branding and design in that space, which is the things we love to do? So that, I talked about this a little bit, about who were these players, even just, 2012, think about how they were just 10 years ago. Where are we going to be in 5 or 10 years? Will we all be dancing to the tune of Facebook and Google, and perhaps Tencent, Baidu, and some of those players? So that has me concerned, because I don't want to be just like this corporate zombie just doing one little thing into a Google program every day. So WPP, largest conglomerate of advertising, design, branding, communications, PR, blah, 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 blah. Very, very bad year. And there's no signs it's going to get better. And just hearing all the sort of excuses and all the sort of pivots and all the sort of ways that Sir Martin Sorrell has tried to wiggle out of this really fucked up situation they're in. And then even in the last week or two, being exposed for not paying those they owed money, but yet asking for those that owed them money to give it to them before Christmas so they could make their numbers look better. That's not cool with me. I have too much integrity to allow our industry, for me to be quiet and have our industry doing that sort of thing. I don't find that acceptable whatsoever. So this had me concerned, mind blown. So that left me with this sort of point of view of like, what are we supposed to do? Me and my friends and my colleagues and people who have integrity and people who love to design and create and love to solve problems, love to help their clients, love to get in the rooms and have good discussions about how we could try things differently, how we could do things that will actually create more jobs and not create more robots. Like, what are we supposed to do? And so that's where I ended my presentation, because she wanted it like 2 days ago. And so then I never ask a strategist to do that. Ever, ever, ever. We take our presentation to the meeting and we change it on the way there. How it happens. That is how it happens. Whatever. So this is my extra slide, which I didn't get to make. This is how it's going to be. So then how do we pivot? What are we supposed to do? So I've spent most of my time on pessimism, which I'm good at. So now I'll try to go to the optimistic direction, which is a struggle for me. And I'm trying to think about the order I want to give these, because some are like, I don't want to do that. And then some are like, okay, that's nicer. The first thing I would say is it's very, very, very important to understand media and user experience and consumer experience. I used to work at a branding agency called the Brand Union, and I loved it. Does anybody work there? Okay, cool. That would be sad. I would have pivoted quickly and not said anything. So I used to work at this branding agency, and I was so good at understanding instinctively what brands and businesses needed to do to sort of stand out and be different and be distinct. I was just really, really good at that. And then I started to realize, wow, that just doesn't matter as much as it used to. Like, that's just not good enough. And I realized I have no idea how you buy media. I have no idea how you measure that sort of stuff. I have no idea how you... I mean, I'm actually dyslexic. I have no idea how you even read the shit, right? What is data? What is data? What does it actually look like on a screen? What are these people talking about when they're like, there's a wealth of data? What are they actually physically looking at and playing with that I don't know about, but everyone seems to think they know about, which lots of people don't know about, by the way. What is it? And so, whilst I was at this really fun branding agency where I was really, really good, I mean, I could talk my way out of anything. I was constantly bullshitting or actually being good. And I realized I have not built the other side of my brain, and I am going to be irrelevant. And the brand union is not going to exist anymore, by the way. They are now being put into, it's like 4 or 5 agencies and put them into one agency, and they're like, oh, this is our new branding division. It's like, that means it's done, guys. Like, party's over. And I jumped ship before that because I could see it coming. And I went into media, and it was horrible. I was not good at it at all, and I'm still there, actually. But I knew that I had to understand that side. And actually what's happened is I'm a black sheep within a media agency, and everyone's like, oh my God, go to JR. Because they don't understand the other side. And so my point there is nothing matters if you don't know how to make it land on the ground. I understand how fun it is to tell a story and a video narrative that you may feel with all your heart needs 20 seconds or 30 seconds to fully reach. I also understand that people scrolling on their phones give no fucks about your apex, and then no fucks about listening to that for 30 seconds. And if you don't capture them within 3 seconds, it's over. So I understood the sort of media side. I'm like, that's why they want 5-second, 6-second ads, because no one's ever going to look at that other one. And I needed to know that, right? I needed to know in some situations you don't need an ad. In some situations you just need to provide utility. You just need to do something better in the experience so that you're not losing them when they already care and have interest for you. So that's the media, the UX sort of thing. And I think sometimes when you're on the other creative end of the spectrum, you just think, how do I get a story in front of people's eyes? And that is already assuming that's the answer. And that's not always the answer. So the other thing is to learn what scares you, which I kind of talked about a little bit. But I don't think that there's going to be a great... People will be able to have the jobs. I don't think there's going to be a great future for people that are just good at one thing. We've entered into this sort of space where you need to be more H structured than T structured. Now, if you don't understand what that means, the T is the idea. You're really good at one thing and a little bit good at a lot. But you're really good at one thing. The H is, you're really good at least 2 things and kind of good at a lot. That truly is important. It really, really is. So I have this sort of creative brand strategy planning mind, but I can also read data and understand data and crunch it and be sensitive to the idea that sometimes my beautiful narratives are just not going to resonate. Designers that can code will have a very wonderful future. Strategists that can design will have a very wonderful future. Account service people that totally and fully and 100% understand technology stacks and DMPs and DSPs will have a wonderful future. Now, I know that might be a little bit scary, but I also, at the height of my branding career, said you're going to have to pivot and try something else, JR, or you're not going to be relevant one day. And so my point there is, don't be afraid to go learn something different. There's places where you can go learn some General Assembly. You can take courses. There's free courses online. But it is important to move beyond just the one space you're amazing at. Anyway, to inspire your work as well. I think probably one of the last big things I would say is practice ideas. I don't think that's actually grammatically correct, but practice capturing ideas. I mentioned I was a very, very bad writer when I was younger, but I just kept writing and exposing myself to critique for my writing. And then before I knew it, I wrote a book. And so this idea to like, this thought to like just keep practicing. I encourage, I think designers should write, designers should journal, because if your client doesn't speak into visual images and doesn't think visually, you need to be able to explain your concepts in rational ways, and sometimes you need to put it tangibly into an email when really you want to send them a mood board. I think that's very, very important, and vice versa. I think it's very important for people who are very lateral and think very structured and write and think in words to expose themselves to things that will make them more creative and expand their thinking and their concepts. And so practice ideas, sketch, draw, paint, take a dance class, take a writing class. I don't know, maybe if you're really dyslexic or something, practice Sudoku. That's gotta be a fucking hard thing to do if you go like that. I think it's really important to try to push yourself and to grow and to just absolutely not be content with where we are, because my mind was blown when I realized if we all stay exactly where we are, there's not going to be too much for us later on. That's my chat. Yeah.
Okay, now we click. Oh, okay. You didn't cover this slide.
Oh, what was it? Oh, God.
But you covered it, right? Data,
yeah, it's fine, it's fine.
Oh, yeah, got it.
Oh, that's more positive. I couldn't remember what my slides were. I love this meme. I use it as much as I can with that little baby.
Yeah, what's the meme called, this one?
It's been around a long time.
It's grown up now, and they, you know, some of these guys, they track these guys who started all these memes.
Oh, I don't want to see him now. No, because it didn't come on as an adorable baby, but what if he didn't turn out to be an adorable child? No one likes.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
Yeah. Okay, so I did have more. Okay, great.
Yeah. All right, so
that's what happened 2 days ago. I totally forgot what those last slides were.
Yeah, so two very interesting different topics. One about like how you could do amazing things for a good cause, and I don't think you've tried something like that before, like that kind of ride, I'd say, like of that kind of intensity. And for yourself, you know, like giving us like wisdom on like when it's time to start thinking about of like, you know, reaching out, coming out of your comfort zone. So maybe 10 minutes, just some questions from the floor. So anything? Yes?
Yeah, I was really curious about the business you're starting. Are you doing a new business because you think there's no future for you in this industry?
Yeah, I'm doing a new business because, yes. But let me put a nuance on it. I think I had this epiphany where I can't do the politics very well. And I don't even mean like crazy. I can be nice to people, I have emotional intelligence. I can be in a room and think someone's an idiot and not call them an idiot. Like I can block that. But what I can't do is be in places where the people who get promoted are the people who get promoted simply because they have learned how to play the game, or because they know how to say the things they don't actually understand. And so I started to realize, I was like, at some of the agencies I worked at, I was sort of looking at the leadership at the top, and I was like, oh my God, they're all bullshitting. Like, we're really fucked, because they're all bullshitting. And the people who are really, really brilliant went and did something different. And I think our industry is having a little bit of a brain drain right now. It's actually in Campaign magazine saying brain drain, which I hate trade magazines, by the way. I think they're just so embarrassing. a bit of a brain drain. And so and then I sort of also had this epiphany. I'm like, okay, so fine, I'll be like a strategy, maybe a chief strategy officer one day, but I don't actually want to do that either because that's hard. And I don't mean hard in terms of thinking the strategy. They have to play these political games. And I started to think, so basically I'm at the height of where my salary is going to ever be. And if it gets higher, it's going to be my head on the chopping block one day. And I'm working for someone else. I'm never going to have more than just my basic salary every year. And I realized if I'm ever going to have the life that I envisioned I would have by now, God, I thought I'd be rich by now. I'm really not. If I'm ever going to have that life, I've got to go try something to make it on my own and then sell that. Dollar Shave Club was sold to Unilever for, I don't know if it's $1 billion or $2 billion. It doesn't matter. There was a B. There's a billion in there. And that was just a dude packaging up. He didn't even make the razors. He sourced the razors from the same people that Gillette did.
Oh my goodness. And then Warby Parker, is it Warby or Warby or something?
Warby Parker.
Warby, yeah. They also, like some college, university,
Yeah.
story.
What is the business?
It is a men's grooming brand that has to do with hair. The irony, but it has to do with hair. I don't want to tell too much because it really is like the only. People will have clients that are similar.
Okay, since both of you are authors, can we ask a question about authoring, writing stuff? Anyone got a question about that? Because I. So what process, like when you had this idea for this book, what was your process to keep you determined to finish it? Because I'm sure it's not it can't be just an overnight thing. As in like, you need to really keep going.
The book, we were speaking at South by Southwest back in 2011. Back then we were looking at what we called urgent genius. David, me and Scott had created this term called news jacking. So back then, it was quite a hot topic. And I basically said to John, the fellow speaker, so there's a book in this. So we wrote a proposal and I sent it off to a number of different art publishers, so Thames and Hudson, Phaidon, Lawrence King. Heard nothing back from Phaidon. Lawrence King took about 3 months to get back, but Thames and Hudson got in touch with him in 2 days. But the irony for me of the process, we were talking about topical marketing, stuff which was really on the button, and it took 18 months to actually get that book out to print. So it's already out of date. And the way the publishing business actually works is very, very old-fashioned, very, very slow. But that process itself is eye-opening. And I think our book was so niche and had a shelf life of only a couple of years. If I was to do it again, I'd make sure it had a wider audience and had a longer shelf life because it's the same amount of effort.
Sorry, can I ask you, did you start promoting the book before publishing to make sure that...
Yeah, I mean, we already had a blog where we were creating examples from around the world. So, yeah, the work we were doing already, we'd already been speaking in South by, so we spent there for 2 years in a row.
Before publishing,
yeah.
to make sure that...
So again, that helps in terms of size, the book and stuff. So the book really was quite an old-fashioned, antiquated way of looking at it, but we wanted something which was physical, because everything we were talking about was temporary, transient.
Your process?
Well, it's interesting because I applied
The discipline.
There was this Financial Times book competition. Like, oh, you put in your proposal, and then you, if they like it, they give you what do you call it? They give you money to write. There you go. And I wrote like 30 pages for my proposal, and I was like, oh my God, I'm done with my book. That's all I want to say. And I was like making the font bigger. And I was like, I don't know what to say. And then I realized, oh my God, this isn't right. So then I got involved with a publisher, and then they're like, no, you did this all the wrong way. You have to start with, first of all, set your goals. What are you trying to achieve with your book? I was not trying to achieve sales. I wanted to write a book so I could prove to myself I could write a book. And then you start with, how is your book unique? And then you start with, what is the outline? What do you want to say in each one of those chapters? what are the anecdotes of the chapters? What are the facts of the chapter? Before you know it, you're like, oh, I just plugged all that up. And then you go and you smooth it all out. And it made it just way more doable. Not just sit down and start typing and hope that you reach 200 pages.
So nice about saying you're an author as well,
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, published.
Yeah. I mean, the reviews are okay. One asshole did not write a nice review. If I ever find out who that is.
Yeah. No. Questions?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So as a creative thinker, like, what is your best advice to someone to translate that into writing? So I think that's quite, it's quite a difficult subject.
To translate into writing?
To translate it into writing. To
Yeah.
kind
Your
of
creative
have a wider
ideas.
audience,
Yeah.
That's quite a big question.
It is
Are
hard.
you talking about capturing the ideas? Are you talking about capturing it or presenting it?
Presenting it back.
Presenting
so
it back.
changing that thought process into words that people can understand.
Well, I'm sure like when you have the images in your head or when you have these sort of visual concepts floating around, you can start to, in your mind, attach words to it. And then I would say just sort of start to jot down what some of those words are on a piece of paper so you don't have to type it in. Like, do it the same way you would visually start to think. Like, think of like word clouds or something. Like, oh, this concept over here is sort of about these esoteric words, and this one's about these esoteric words. And then there's some basics to how you present to a client. What's the truth? What's the benefit? What's the barrier? How is this visual connection or this creative idea helping to meet or achieve those things? And then that becomes the glue of your esoteric words. I would really think about mind mapping. Because if you're a visual person, you don't want to type in little lines like that.
Grant of you. Hold it. Words.
Words quite a good application. No, I think getting away from the keyboards, to JR's point, is actually, I mean, a lot of the writers and people in our creative department will scribble stuff down, rather than go straight to the keyboard. I started with a vision. I started as an art director. Then started to write. My writing skills to get to the level where I'm proud of it. So,
definitely do it with your hand, because you have that, if you're a visual person, you have that sort of connection to physical movement. And so if you do it with your hand, it will be more comfortable, just as much as you sketch, write phrases and words and concepts.
We're recruiters, and I can listen to both of you like talk forever. Is there any hope for people like us to kind of get to where you guys are in terms of making that jump? You said about the pivot, but if you're not going, it's all I've ever done. I mean, it's one hell of a pivot. Is there hope for someone to do that?
No, but I'm sure that you have clients that really enjoy working with you and want to work with you and enjoy that, and then eventually, I know lots of recruiters, but at some point, a spec came across the desk and like, oh, I'd like to do that, and then the person was like, okay, you come do it. I mean, yeah, for sure. And then just put shit on your resume that you want to say, like, starting a business. They don't have to know how much you've started, but like, I can't believe I said that to a recruiter. Never mind. No, but it's funny. It's funny though. Like, when I worked 2 jobs ago at this place, Cara, there was this one guy that was applying for a job, and he had on there that for 2 years he tried to do like a lemonade brand, and then he's like, and it failed epically, and I was like, I've never done that. I've never tried to do that, so I have nothing but respect for you. And when we hired him, it's great, it's wonderful. I definitely think you can pivot, absolutely. And jobs are all about relationships, for real.
yeah.
Every job I've ever got was because I knew somebody. Yeah.
Nobody reads CVs.
I'm going to have my card out.
Let's go.
I think the big challenge we find with recruitment is going beyond the traditional, so pivoting outside the normal places where you go to fish. So if you look at sport and way talent scouts work in that kind of setup, and that's a big investment, isn't it? But almost to go beyond to do stuff which LinkedIn can't. And then the other thing, I suppose, is what else can you add? Because if you've got relationships with people, you look at mental health within our industry, and areas where the areas of life coaching and psychology. I don't know, but what's the pivot? I suppose, and the age.
Yeah. Question.
Yeah, one of the things that caught my attention about both presentations is the sense of pain in the creative industry. So I wanted to ask you, when you recognize the time when you need to change, when you need to pivot, how the pain is driving the sense of changing the momentum of your career and make that shift that brings you to another place.
The greatest pain, I think, is when you feel like you're stuck doing the same thing. I think routine is pain. So, but for me, moving back from Singapore, I could stay there for another 10 years, easy. Great life, but not that interesting. So, getting out of the comfort zone, coming back to London, seeing London with fresh eyes is one thing, and then having an idiot like Ed say, do you want to come and do? Well, I didn't really know what it was, so I was just naive. But getting out of the comfort zone and break routine, I think that's really important.
Would you like to answer that question?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think for me, I have a really strong sense of justice. I don't like when things aren't right. One time I live in Bethnal Green, this guy was eating a Big Mac and he threw his Big Mac box on the ground, and I picked up the box and like handed it back to him. And so when I know I have to go is when I start to feel guilty. When I start to feel like, oh, I really feel like I'm not doing a good job now. I feel like I'm just like clocking in and clocking out. When I know that I've spent more of the day reading fucking Facebook articles or CNN or watching YouTube videos about the Justice League review or whatever. That's what I mean. Then I start to feel really guilty, and I start to feel like I'm a little bit ashamed that my integrity is not where it should be right now. And then that usually, but that's not like a week process. That usually eats at me for like 6 months or a year, and then I'm like, no, we're done here. I've got to move on. And I try to keep my life really, really nimble so that I'm not wedded to my job.
Okay. Fred?
Yeah, I was going to ask Grant, but I think it can be for both of you. You've been in Singapore for 7 years.
Yeah.
It's as much as London, a multicultural city. So just tell us a little bit about that, because that's what we're celebrating here as well. And how much of that bringing a lot of minds and backgrounds and nationalities and peoples together benefits the output.
I mean, Singapore has to do that because it's, it fits within the M25. And back in 1965, when it came about because Malaysia didn't want Singapore, but they wanted to join Singapore, to join Malaysia, and Malaysia can't say no, so they had to pivot. And the pivot was based on actually having a universal language, which was English, because if it had been Chinese, there would have been too much emphasis on that part of the population. It would have been a level playing field. They made a decision to turn it from a fishing village into a financial hub. And in 50 years, it's amazing what that place has achieved. So the good thing about that is the speed of progress and the ability to get things done. You could argue, and one of the biggest criticisms about Singapore is it's a bit bland. On the surface it is, but there are subcultures, and because it is a melting pot, loads of influences are coming in all the time. So from the food perspective, there's nowhere better in the world. You've got everything, brilliant street food all the way up to 2, 3 dishes. There's a place, there's a hub to get around Southeast Asia. It is awesome. But for me, I felt a little bit trapped with the family. It was time to go. We had both our kids there, so a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. It felt like time to come back, get closer to the family again, and return to London and see London. Because I just love London's buzz, the size of it. I think that's the appreciation I have now, sort of coming back, looking at it with fresh eyes, and just noticing the change after 7 years as well. Go around certain places like Old Street roundabout, and all of a sudden that's become Silicon roundabout. Amazing, amazing.
Yeah, what about you? I mean, you were in Europe.
Yeah.
Massive.
Yeah.
Came to London.
Yeah.
You're going to LA.
Yeah, I lived in Dubai as well. I just don't talk about it.
How much do you think
It's
is
terribly important because it's so important. Because, first of all, you know the whole story. Oh, you get fresh ideas, new perspectives, blah, 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 blah. But I've been in so many conversations where someone is presenting an idea and I'm like, that only works in America. That totally doesn't work here. Like, the other day, the CEO of LinkedIn, Jeff Weiner, he was doing this thing about like, what sort of content should we have on LinkedIn? And Jeff Weiner is very much like, he tries to be like Oprah Winfrey. He's like, you can be anything you want to be. Life is amazing. I'm so happy. Tell your coworkers you love them and hug them today and all this sort of shit. And I was like, that is so American. That is so West Coast American. You're totally missing the pulse of the rest of the world. And so it's those sort of perspectives that you cannot have if you stay in your home country. You just can't see the other side because you've never experienced the other side. And for me, I just keep having those eye-opening experiences. I mean, like, you know, I see shit all the time where people are like, oh, it's our global campaign, and so we're going to do Facebook, and we're going to do Google. And then I'm like, so what are we going to do in South Korea where we have Kakao? Or what are we going to do in China where we have Alibaba, Tencent, WeChat? Or what are we going to, you know, so then they're like, who is that? And I'm like, exactly, it's not, what are we going to do in Russia with vContact? Then it's not global. So unless you go and start meeting new people, you're not a global practitioner. But you all are, because that's why you're here.
I think on that actually, just going back to London and seeing how the London agency is still very London-centric. You know? Yeah. And it's actually, we've got more people who've been around the network coming back, and it's quite refreshing. It feels more international now. Yeah. I think that's so important to have that perspective.
More than 7 years ago.
Yeah,
you sense it?
Definitely. Yeah, it's definitely more open now. But there's still a little bit of, you go, yeah, it's fine for a UK campaign, but that's so London. Even for the UK campaign, it just feels very London focused. Yeah. You've got to remember you're not the centre of the universe. And that thing about Asia being one mass, it's not. I mean, Southeast Asia is so diverse.
One of the things I learned when I was visiting Singapore, and we were having like this global team meeting with my team and stuff. And we were at this restaurant, and I'm like, let's play a game. Everyone pull out their phones. And they put out their phones, and I was like, open up your app usage section of your phones. And that was so eye-opening for me, because I'm like, Instagram, LinkedIn, Google, Facebook. When they but then when the South Koreans put out their phones, it's total different apps. And then like when the Americans put out their phones, the proportions of it were different. And so then I realized it's not all the same puzzle pieces, it's not chess pieces. It's actually very different things in very different places. That's when you start to realize the whole world is truly not like London.
Cool. I just have one last question. What would you say is a great, or a tip for creative people from various industries who are new to the UK or indeed London? What is that one thing you think you would want to impart to them? You know, they've got their dreams, they've got their hopes. And based on your experience, say you were in Singapore, and for you coming from New York, what would that be that one most important attribute a person would have?
I mean, I don't know if it's what you're asking, but I just remember moving down to London from Birmingham, that's where I went to university, so I just remember moving down to London. I think it took me 3 years to actually get the lay of the land, because it's so big. Yeah. So to me, it's like, take time to explore, and it's just so big. Whereas Singapore, within 6 months, it's so small, you kind of have a sense of place.
So be patient.
Be patient.
Take your time. Yeah.
I think for me, I think London, it's known as having the best cultural institutions in the world and the museums. But I think those tend to be in like tiers. So you've got your big ones like the Tate Modern and like the Royal Opera House, or I don't even know what the names of the big ones are. Go to the other tiers, like the White Cube Gallery, or Chisenhale in East London, or now I'm drawing a blank, or Sadler's Wells to see contemporary dance performances. go to the venue's lower funnel. Because the top funnel is just, it's the same shit everywhere in the world. I mean, it's going to be the same touring big thing. It's like, you're not getting inspiration.
She's a bit stay modern though. I don't think you should cancel that.
Oh, okay, fine. Yeah, fine. Do you? You work at Tate Modern.
Tate Modern's really good.
Okay, yeah. Love the Tate Modern. Buy a membership. Tate Modern. No, but like Chisenhale or like Sadler's Wells or Waikiki, like I'm really drawing blank, but because then you go there and you see the Fringe, and the Fringe is what London does very, very well. I think Japan does the Fringe well. I think London does the Fringe well. Maybe Berlin does the Fringe well. I don't know what other cities are good at the Fringe right now, but those, like, oh my God, the creativity and being really provoked and being willing to see stuff sometimes that you're like, what the fuck was that? Like, I've seen modern dance performances where I was like, where it was literally people dressed in inflatable. What happened?
Yeah, if that car is from someone,
Lock the door.
if that car is from
Speaking of the Fringe,
There you go. Performance art.
but yeah, but I don't think anyone died.
Marina Abramovich's new tree.
She's in. Sorry, you want to continue? Okay, guys, let's just finish
Oh, I mean,
on your point.
just go see the weird stuff, because the weird stuff makes you start to think about your barriers, and if you're a creative person, you should always stretch your barriers.
Okay. Thank you very much. Give them a hand.
So, international creatives, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that is really cool, isn't it?
Thank you for having me, international creatives. Get in that pink lycra. I want to see you on the bike.
Having me, I hope that I didn't offend anyone. And find me on LinkedIn, JR Little, and we can keep the conversation going.